Have you ever felt like everything that's happening in your life isn't a coincidence? That every challenge, every loss, and even every victory is preparing you for something much greater? If this question made your heart beat faster, it's no coincidence. This video is for you, not for your neighbor, not for a distant friend, but for you, watching now. Because if you're here, it's a sign that you're part of something rare, something reserved only for the chosen ones. And believe me, there are forces trying to stop you, but there are even greater forces working in your favor. Today, you'll understand why nothing, absolutely nothing that has been tried against you will prevail. But before we continue, I need you to do 3 things right now. Leave your like so this message reaches more people who need to hear it. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos that will open your eyes even more. And in the comments, write the number 77. This is the number of the chosen ones. And when you write it, you will be declaring that you are ready to live what is already written for you. Take a deep breath, because what you're about to hear from now on could change the way you see everything around you. There are moments in life when the universe sends clear, almost tangible signs, warning of paths not to be taken. These warnings don't always come in the form of a thunderclap or a visible miracle. Often, they come as a whisper in the conscience, an uneasy feeling in the chest, or coincidences that are not coincidences. But no matter how clear the message, some choose to ignore it. Arrogance and a false sense of control cause the mind to reject any imposed limits, as if destiny were merely a puppet in the hands of one's own ego. The problem is that by defying these warnings, one is not only choosing the wrong path, they are inviting forces closer that cannot be controlled. Divine warning is, in essence, an opportunity to avoid one's own ruin. It's like seeing a storm brewing on the horizon and yet insisting on sailing toward it, believing you can change the course of the winds. History shows that all who follow this path meet the same end. Not only do they face the storm, but they discover it seemed tailor-made for them. The voice that echoed before was not a threat, but a wasted chance at redemption. And when the message is ignored, the wheels begin to spin faster. Small circumstances begin to align against the offender, not randomly, but with frightening precision. Everything that once seemed under control begins to slip through their fingers. It's at this point that they realize, too late, that that warning was actually their last ticket out of the gate. What I'm about to say now isn't for everyone, but if you're here, it's because you know there's something bigger at work in your life. When all seemed lost, something put you back on track. That's not luck, it's destiny. If this message resonates with you, use the thanks button here on YouTube and send $100 as a gesture of faith and gratitude. This isn't just supporting the channel, it's a signal to the universe that you're ready to invest in yourself and live as a true chosen one. There are dangers that people believe are too far away to worry about. It'll never happen to me, they say, as if immune to the consequences of their choices, but the fire, silent and patient, approaches without fanfare. When they finally realize it, the flames are already licking the walls of their own home. And this is no ordinary fire. It's a fire that was warned about, predicted, even begged to be avoided. Still, pride blinded reason. This fire is more than a metaphor for problems. It is the materialization of what has been ignored. It feeds on small oversights, on bad choices repeated until they become habits, and on opportunities to retreat that have been ignored. Those who play with it believe they can extinguish it at any moment, but when the time comes, they discover there is not enough water in the world to contain the flames they themselves lit. And the cruelest thing is realizing that often the fire didn't start outside but inside. Fueled by envy, greed, and the desire for control, it grows invisibly until it explodes, turning lives to ash. It's then that our eyes open to the truth. The fire was never far away. It was just waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Destiny, whatever one's beliefs, is like a river with a strong current. It's possible to swim in it, follow its flow, even try to alter it with small actions. But defying its power completely is a risk no mortal should take. Yet some believe they possess this ability, as if they could manipulate the board of life and move the pieces at will. This is the first trap, confusing boldness with invincibility, defying fate, especially when it involves those protected by something greater, is like tinkering with a complex mechanism without understanding its workings. Each miscalculated intervention creates a chain reaction that spirals out of control. What once seemed like a strategic move becomes the first piece to fall in a devastating domino effect. With each attempt at manipulation, the collapse approaches faster. In the end, fate not only regains control, but does so in a way that exposes every mistake, every lie, every hidden agenda. And the irony is that those who try to change someone else's course end up altering, for the worse, only their own path. The game of challenging fate never ends well for those who play against it. Those protected by greater forces carry with them a kind of invisible shield. This shield is unseen, but it is felt, sometimes as a tide of events that always saves them at the last moment, sometimes as an insurmountable wall that prevents any advance against them. And, as much as this may seem superstitious to some, history proves that underestimating this protection is a fatal mistake. When someone tries to harm a protégé, they're not just attacking that person, but everything that protects them. It's like trying to cut down a tree without realizing its roots are attached to a mountain. Each blow wears them down, each strategy fails, until the attacker begins to sense something bigger is fighting back. Small defeats arise, resources are lost, allies drift away. The scariest thing is that this defense isn't just passive, it responds, and responds proportionally to the attack. The more one insists on messing with the wrong person, the heavier the burden becomes for those who dared to do so. In the end, the weight isn't on the chosen one, it's on those who tried to bring them down. It's common for those who defy greater forces to experience a few small victories at first. This intoxicates them. They believe they're in control, that they can continue advancing with impunity. But these victories are like bait placed along the path, and each one leads deeper into the trap they themselves are helping to build. The danger lies in overconfidence. Initial success leads to the danger signs being ignored. The attacker begins to believe they're one step ahead, when in fact they're already trapped in the web. Decisions become bolder and more reckless, as if there's no possibility of defeat. This is when the trap closes, and when it closes, there's no escape. Everything done comes back multiplied. Every blow given becomes a blow received with even greater force. What seemed like a winning streak was, in fact, a dead end, built with one's own hands. Ambition, at its core, is a neutral force. It can drive great feats, pushing a person to surpass limits and achieve goals that seemed unattainable. But when it springs from a heart tainted by envy and the desire to bring others down, it ceases to be fuel and becomes poison. It's a slow-acting poison that begins subtly. A comparison here, a resentment there, the feeling that another's success is a personal affront. At first, this feeling may even go unnoticed by the person carrying it, but like all poison, it spreads, infiltrating thoughts and decisions until the person can no longer distinguish their own path from the path they wish to destroy. When ambition becomes tainted, the perception of reality becomes distorted. Every achievement of another is seen as a threat. Every obstacle faced by oneself is seen as unfair, and driven by this distorted vision, the individual begins to engage in dangerous games, believing they can manipulate circumstances to bring down the enemy. But the irony is inevitable. The more they try to pull down what's above them, the deeper they sink. This decline doesn't happen suddenly. It's gradual, like a ship that begins to sink silently, without the crew noticing the water invading the hold. And when collapse finally arrives, it doesn't just come as a material or social loss. It strikes at the core of a person's identity. What they believe to be their strength, their determination, their smartness, their strategic vision, turns out to be nothing more than a mask to hide deep insecurities. The poison of distorted ambition not only destroys opportunities, but corrodes the very essence of those who carry it, leaving behind not a victor, but a distorted and empty reflection of what could once have been. Envy is an invisible prison, and the most dangerous part is that the prisoner often doesn't realize they're trapped. It all starts with a harmless comparison, a fleeting thought, why him and not me? But this thought, repeated countless times, becomes a mental habit. With each victory of another, a shadow grows in the heart, and this shadow begins to obscure vision. The person can no longer see their own opportunities because their eyes are fixed solely on the other person's path. This blindness is treacherous. It causes any gesture from the other to be interpreted as an affront, any success as usurpation, and any resistance as provocation. It's as if the mind creates a parallel reality in which the other becomes the cause of all failures and frustrations. From there, impulsive decisions arise, actions that aim not to build something of one's own, but rather to destroy what belongs to the other. It's the kind of war no one can win, because in the end, there is no real conquest, only mutual destruction, with the greatest victim being the one who initiated the attack. And the cruelest thing about the blindness caused by envy is that it prevents a person from realizing they're digging their own grave. They convince themselves they're fighting or defending themselves, when in reality they're just wasting vital energy in an illusory battle. And when the curtain finally falls, when the truth is revealed and the world around them continues to spin unfazed by their efforts, all that's left is the emptiness of realizing that the time spent trying to destroy the other was the same time they could have spent building their own victory. There are forces that cannot be measured, weighed, or photographed, but which are as real as the wind on your face. The spiritual protection that surrounds certain individuals is one of these forces. To the outsider, it may seem like luck, coincidence, or even clever manipulation of circumstances. But to those who know the truth, it is much more than that. It is an invisible armor, made of purpose, principles, and connections to something far greater than any human interest. This armor doesn't prevent attacks from being launched, but it ensures they never reach the target as the attacker intended. It's as if each blow is intercepted before reaching the vital center, redirected to become fuel for resistance and strength. Interestingly, this protection is often so subtle that the protected person only realizes its presence after the storm has passed, and, miraculously, they are still standing. For those who attempt to attack, the effect is devastating. The more they persist, the more the tide seems to turn against them. What makes this armor even more powerful is that it isn't static. It responds. It adapts, strengthens, and returns to the attacker the energy they tried to project. The result is a relentless cycle. Each attempt at destruction becomes an obstacle in the attacker's own path. And by the time they finally realize they're not just fighting a person, but a much greater force, it's too late to retreat. Patience is one of the most misunderstood virtues. Many see it as a sign of passivity, as if the lack of immediate reaction were proof of weakness or inability. But anyone who has faced life head-on knows that true patience is a strategic choice, not a limitation. It's the ability to bide your time, to watch the enemy deplete their strength while you preserve yours. This confusion leads many to the fatal error of underestimating the calm person. They believe they can provoke without retaliation, manipulate without facing consequences, and that the other person's silence is a sign of submission. But what they don't understand is that while they act impulsively, the patient person is building an unshakable position. They take their time, knowing that time is on their side, and that the truth, sooner or later, will come out. When the moment of response arrives, it is precise and definitive. There's no need for shouting, fanfare, or dramatic gestures. The simple act of exposing the truth or allowing natural consequences to unfold is enough to dismantle any narrative built on lies. And it is then that the deceiver realizes they mistook silence for weakness, when in fact they were faced with someone who had always been in control. We live surrounded by illusions, some necessary to maintain hope, others created as traps to deceive ourselves and others. In the context of conflict, these illusions can become dangerous weapons. Believing that the other is vulnerable, that their path can be interrupted with a few calculated actions, or that their strength is merely a facade, are common illusions for those who decide to confront someone protected by something greater. These illusions act like distorting lenses. They not only hide the truth, but also create a false sense of security. The attacker believes they have the map and control of the situation, unaware that they are operating on false information, misreading signals, and underestimating unseen forces. It's like walking confidently on thin ice, believing it's solid until they hear the first crack beneath their feet. And the fate of these illusions is always the same: to be shattered by reality. When this happens, there's no time to rewrite the narrative, nor to correct the decisions based on it. The revelation arrives like a cold, definitive blow, making it clear that the person was never in control of anything, and that, in fact, they spent the entire time engineering their own downfall. There was a time when consequences took months, years, or even decades to manifest. It was possible for someone to act maliciously and spend much of their life believing they had escaped unscathed, deceiving the world and themselves. But these times are changing. We live in an era where the feedback from actions, good or bad, is faster, more precise, and often more relentless. It's as if the universe has quickened its pace, tired of waiting for learning to come slowly. Now every action is followed almost immediately by its reaction, as if life were determined to show, without delay, the consequences of the choices we make. For those who attempt to harm someone protected by a higher purpose, this acceleration is devastating. The malicious plan is executed, but even before its effects are felt by the target, life has already sent back to the attacker the same weight, or even more, that they attempted to unleash. It's as if the energy doesn't even make the full journey. It turns around in the air and hits the sender back in the chest. This speed allows for no defenses, justifications, or last-ditch maneuvers. And the most ironic thing is that, in this rapid cycle, the mask falls much sooner than expected. Those around them see the connections, put the pieces together, and recognize the hand behind the plots. Exposure is inevitable, and the fall becomes not only a result, but also a public spectacle. The law of cause and effect has always existed, but today it acts like a lightning bolt, and for those who dare attack the protected, this lightning bolt never misses its target. There's a silent danger in believing you have the power to determine another person's fate. It's an illusion that seduces many, the feeling that with influence, manipulation, and control, you can decide who rises and who falls, who prospers and who fails. But this illusion is like walking on the edge of a cliff blindfolded. Sooner or later, one false step leads to the abyss. When someone tries to play God, especially by interfering in the trajectory of someone guided by something greater, they are messing with gears they don't understand. The universe, or life itself, not only observes, but reacts. And it reacts with surgical precision, dismantling one by one the structures that supported the usurper. Trust relationships begin to crumble, resources disappear, doors once open slam shut. The hand that tried to move the pieces of destiny now finds itself with no control over its own game. And the price, almost always, is higher than imagined. It's not just about losing influence or status, but about watching helplessly as everything built on manipulation is demolished. It's as if life itself returns arrogance with a definitive lesson. No matter how high one thinks they are, no throne can withstand the weight of truth and justice when they decide to impose themselves. Patience is one of the most beautiful and dangerous forces in the universe. Beautiful because it allows time for mistakes to be recognized and corrected. Dangerous because, when it reaches its limit, the reversal is relentless. Those who deal with a protégé often confuse this patience with permission, believing they can test, provoke, and challenge without ever facing the consequences. But divine patience is not infinite. It is measured, and when it overflows, it transforms into action. During this waiting period, the offender receives subtle signals, strange situations, small losses, unexplained discomforts. These are warnings, invitations to stop before it's too late. But intoxicated by their own arrogance, they ignore each of these warnings, believing nothing concrete will happen. It is at this point that patience ceases to be a shield and becomes a sword. When the turning point occurs, it isn't gradual. It's abrupt, precise, and definitive. Everything that was hidden comes to light. Every hidden action is exposed, and the consequences arrive like an unstoppable wave. What was once a discreetly withdrawn protection is now completely absent, leaving the offender alone to face the weight of their own actions. And the lesson, though harsh, is clear. To trifle with divine patience is to dance on the edge of a cliff. There's a special silence before major changes. It's not the silence of peace, but of accumulated tension, like the heavy air before a storm. Those who attack their protected counterparts often interpret this silence as victory. If there's no reaction, it's because I'm winning. Little do they know that behind this calm, forces are at work, aligning every detail for a response that will come at the perfect moment. This silence is strategic. It's time for the truth to mature, for the masks to fall on their own, for the aggressor's own mistakes to become visible to all. While the aggressor convinces himself he's in control, reality is preparing to turn the tables. And when that happens, there's no stopping the avalanche. The turnaround, when it comes, doesn't require much effort on the part of the protected. It's almost as if life itself takes charge of executing justice, using the weight of the aggressor's own actions against him. Silence, therefore, was never a weakness. It was merely the prelude to an inevitable outcome. Many believe that operating in the shadows grants immunity. They think that because they are unseen, because they leave no obvious traces, they can manipulate, deceive, and harm without ever being held accountable. It's a comfortable but extremely fragile illusion. The shadows are not a shield, they merely delay revelation. In the case of those protected, this revelation is even more inevitable. There's a kind of invisible radar that detects intentions even before they materialize. Small signs, unusual coincidences, and accurate intuitions act as beacons in the darkness, guiding the protected to perceive what's hidden. They may not react immediately, but they know. And this knowledge is enough to shed light on everything at the right moment. When the shadows dissipate, the impact is devastating for those who hid within them. Exposure doesn't come alone. It brings with it the accumulated consequences of each act committed. And then, there's nowhere left to hide. The shadows, which seemed safe, become mere memories of a time when one believed oneself untouchable. There are people who, when faced with someone calm, tranquil, and centered, make the mistake of believing they're facing a harmless adversary. They look at this serene posture and mistake it for passivity, believing they can manipulate, provoke, or underestimate without any risk. They then begin to play small power games, moving subtle pieces, testing limits, believing they control the situation. But what they don't realize is that, behind this calm, there's a sleeping giant, a silent force, but one with incalculable reach. These games begin with innuendos, small sabotages, behind-the-scenes actions that seem harmless. Those who execute them feel clever, as if they're ahead in an invisible chess game. The problem is that at some point, this giant's patience runs out. The awakening isn't immediate, but once it happens, there's no turning back. It's as if a dam has accumulated water for years and in an instant bursts, releasing an unstoppable wave. At that moment, all small games lose their meaning, because the emerging force isn't playing to win points. It's playing to end the game. The most impressive thing is that this reaction isn't uncontrolled. It's precise and accurate. The giant doesn't awaken to exact revenge, but to restore order. And when this happens, everyone who previously felt confident in their maneuvers discovers, too late, that they weren't dealing with someone fragile, but with something much greater than they could have imagined. The awakening is inevitable, and the impact irreversible. Each person is born with a path, a kind of invisible map that guides their journey. For some, this map is simple and linear. For others, it is complex, full of forks and turning points. For those with a higher purpose, this map is more than a life script. It is a carefully crafted blueprint for something much greater. And the fatal mistake some make is believing they can redesign this map, altering the path of those destined for something beyond human comprehension. Interfering with this plan isn't like scratching out a drawing and redoing it. It's like trying to redraw the constellations in the sky, ignoring that they were already there long before any attempt at control. Every action to change the course of a protégé not only fails to achieve the objective, but also triggers side effects that backfire on those who dared to tamper with the original lines. It's a silent but relentless process in which the very act of manipulation becomes a trap. In the end, the lesson is stark and clear. The map can be challenged, but never rewritten. Those who try to change the fate of a protégé invariably end up changing only their own, and not for the better. It's like trying to change the course of a river with your bare hands. The force of the current always prevails, and those who oppose it are swept away. Not all destruction begins from the outside. Often it begins silently, like a small seed of resentment planted in the heart. At first, it's just a nuisance, a recurring thought that goes unnoticed. But, constantly fed, this feeling grows and transforms into an invisible addiction, the need to see others fall. This is the most dangerous type of addiction, as it feeds not on external substances, but on the very life energy of the person carrying it. Over time, this obsession begins to shape every decision, every conversation, and every glance. The world begins to be seen through the lens of comparison and envy, and the target of this fixation occupies constant space in the obsessed person's mind. Gradually, nothing else matters but finding ways to harm, delay, or extinguish the light of the one who bothers them. But what the addict doesn't realize is that, while directing all their energy toward destroying the other, they are corroding their own life. It's like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. This internal consumption isn't quick, but it's inevitable. Joy fades, peace becomes a distant concept, and even identity begins to unravel. And when the extent of the damage is finally realized, it's too late. The addiction has become part of who they are. There's no victory in this struggle, only a slow, painful self-destruct, until nothing remains but emptiness. When someone receives a sincere warning, they often interpret it as an act of care. But when pride is too great, that same warning is seen as a provocation or threat. It is at this point that many lose their last chance to avoid a fall. The warning, in fact, is a gift, an opportunity to reconsider, reflect, and change course before it's too late. Those who ignore this gift fail to realize that by doing so, they are signing their own sentence. The warning is given with the intention of offering time and space for repentance, but when it is ignored, the sequence of negative events becomes almost automatic. It's like standing in front of a sign that says, "Broken bridge ahead," and still accelerating. The final destination is no longer a mystery, just a matter of time. The most tragic thing is that when the consequences arrive, these same people look back and realize they did indeed have the chance to prevent it all. Only then do they understand that the warning wasn't a threat, but an act of mercy. But by then, the bridge has already collapsed, and crossing is impossible. Life often offers one last opportunity to change before everything falls apart. This chance rarely comes with clear announcements or dramatic moments. On the contrary, it presents itself subtly, almost imperceptibly, so that only the attentive recognize it. It could be advice, an unexpected encounter, or even a nagging feeling that insists on demanding attention. For those who live immersed in arrogance or emotional blindness, this last chance goes unnoticed. They believe they are in complete control of the situation and that any warning is just meaningless noise. And so they continue moving forward, unaware that they are passing the point of no return. When the moment passes, there's no getting it back. The pieces begin to fall in rapid succession, and what could have been avoided becomes an inevitable reality. It's at that moment that consciousness awakens, but there's nothing that can be done. The last chance is behind us, silent, ignored, and now irreversibly lost. There's something deeply unsettling about someone who attempts to attack and realizes too late that an invisible force is protecting the target. This protection isn't limited to happy coincidences or inexplicable lucky breaks. It's a living web of circumstances, intuitions, and quick responses that always seem to act at the right moment. To the protected, it may seem natural, but to the attacker, it's a frustrating and terrifying mystery. It's like fighting the wind. No matter how many blows you throw, they never land where they should. This strength is not the fruit of spectacle magic, but of something deeper and more deeply rooted. A connection to a purpose that transcends any human interest. Those who walk within this alignment live surrounded by signs, open paths, and above all, by the closing of doors that could lead to disaster. And this same energy that guides also defends. The greater the attack, the stronger the reaction. It is a cycle that cannot be manipulated because it does not depend on human will, but on something much more vast. For those who try to oppose it, this protection becomes an insurmountable wall. The attempts are repeated, but each one seems to be intercepted before causing any real damage. And over time, the aggressor himself begins to realize he's wasting energy, like someone fighting against the tide and only drowning faster. The invisible force doesn't just protect, it wears down and exhausts those who dare to face what cannot be overcome. Every attack requires energy. Planning, executing, and sustaining an offensive against someone takes time, focus, and effort. But when that energy is directed against someone protected by something greater, it doesn't reach its intended destination. Instead, it returns, charged, to the sender. It's like throwing a spear against a wall and watching it ricochet back, with more force than when it was thrown. This dynamic transforms every attempt to harm into an act of self-destruction. The aggressor doesn't realize it right away. At first, they feel strategic, cunning, confident that they can prevail through persistence. But with each step, unknowingly, they are weakening. Resources begin to dwindle, allies drift away, doors that once opened are slammed shut. And the most painful thing is that many of these losses have no apparent direct relationship to the attack. They seem like bad luck, unfortunate circumstances, or miscalculations. But deep down, they are merely the inevitable reflex of challenging that which cannot be overthrown. When he finally realizes it, he's already surrounded by ruins. And what was once a campaign against someone specific turns into a desperate fight to save what's left of himself. At this point, the attacker discovers too late that the greatest victim of the attack was never the other. It was himself. There are people who, over time, carefully build the walls of their own prison. Brick by brick, action by action, they create a framework that at first seems solid and safe. Each successful manipulation, each lie believed, each alliance gained through deception is seen as another step toward the top. But the structure they erected wasn't meant to protect them. It was meant to fall. The cruelest thing is that this ruin is always self-inflicted. It's not the protégé who needs to act to bring down the architect. All it takes is time to pass and their own actions to mature to the point of no return. When this happens, the foundations begin to crack. The same allies who once helped become enemies, the lies that sustained victories begin to unravel, and the carefully constructed image crumbles before everyone's eyes. The fall, then, is not only inevitable, but also public. There is no hiding it, because every part of it is a direct consequence of something that was done in the shadows. And the ultimate irony is that while the perpetrator believed he was paving the way for someone else's downfall, he was, in fact, erecting his own scaffold. Everything in life is recorded in some way. Every word, every choice, every intention leaves an invisible trail, like marks in the sand that time may try to erase, but which the sea always reveals anew. For some, this notion is frightening. For others, it's simply a natural law of existence. But for those who constantly seek to harm others, especially those with greater protection, this trail becomes the final proof on the day of reckoning. Recognition doesn't come immediately because time is often given as an opportunity for change. But when that change doesn't happen, when the offender persists on the same path of destruction, the adjustment arrives. And when it arrives, there's no negotiation, no agreement, no postponement. It's the kind of payment that comes with accrued interest, bringing to light not just the latest mistake, but all those that have piled up along the way. This moment is overwhelming. No matter how high one has climbed or how secure one feels, the fall is proportional to the weight of the bill. And the harshest truth is that at this moment, there is nowhere left to run, the reckoning cannot be postponed, and the payment is made with the most valuable currency, peace itself. While all this storm rages for those who defied the unchallenged, the protected keep walking. Not because they are immune to pain or hardship, but because their focus is on something greater. They don't need to fight every attack, respond to every provocation, or engage in games that would only drain their energy. Their greatest weapon is constancy, the ability to stay the course, even when the road is narrow and rocky. This seemingly simple stance is actually the source of his victory. For while others lose themselves in disputes and traps of their own creation, the protégé continues to accumulate steps toward his purpose. The victory he achieves is not noisy. It doesn't need to be announced because it is evident to those who observe. It is a victory made of resilience, faith, and the profound understanding that nothing can stop what is destined to happen. And when, finally, those who tried to overthrow him look around and see only ruins, they realize that the one they sought to destroy not only survived, but thrived. Victory is silent, but silence in this case speaks louder than any cry of triumph. He didn't conquer someone, he conquered everything.